Ever fallen into the trap of false friends? And no, I don't mean your friend ditching you on karaoke night.
Oh, you mean those words that sound practically the same across different languages, but
But their meanings are totally different, yeah.
hmm.
We're diving deep into those tricky false friends today.
Using a bunch of research and articles we dug up
Even found something on the Planet Word Museum's blog, by the way.
really highlights how avoiding a travel mishap is just the tip of the iceberg here.
Right. These false friends are practically like linguistic time capsules.
Giving a glimpse into the evolution of languages and how they've all intertwined.
It's amazing. They really give us a glimpse into history, like how languages borrow from each other, how cultures mix, not just random words. Really fascinating.
Speaking of, have any good stories about mixing things up?
Oh, totally. Barcelona. Tried to be cool ordering agua con gas, thinking I was getting, sparkling water.
What happened?
Waiter looked at me like I had two heads. Turns out con gas, in that context, means with gasoline.
Yikes.
Yeah, stuck with still water after that. Really shows how these false friends go beyond funny travel stories, don't they?
For sure. The complexity of language is pretty amazing.
Right. Shared roots, but the meanings take these wild turns.
Totally. Depends on the culture, the history, all of that.
Shows that language is anything but static.
Absolutely. Always changing and evolving, sometimes in ways you'd never expect.
Like the word conservative, for instance.
Oh, good example. The way it's used, especially with environmental issues, has really shifted.
Yeah. What was once about protecting resources might mean something completely different now.
It's all about how society and its values change. Really fascinating when you stop and think about it.
So these false friends, they're like linguistic echoes. We've got that down. But let's get specific, some real-world examples. Our sources are packed with these cognates that took some wild turns. For instance, ever heard the word rolig? Means fun in Swedish. But use that with your Danish or Norwegian pals. You're actually saying calm.
Wild, right?
Really shows you how even languages that are practically siblings, like those Scandinavian ones, can have these little quirks. Language is dynamic.
Right.
It's not just about family trees. Words, just like cultures, they have their own journeys, their meaning shaped, even if they start in the same place.
Like those separated at birth stories, except with words instead of people. Share some core traits, but end up totally different.
And what about English itself? It's like one giant false friend sometimes, especially compared to those Romance languages. What's up with that?
That one's got language experts baffled for centuries, really. Big factor is history. Got to think about that. The Norman conquest back in 1066 brought a flood of French into English.
Right.
And then there's the great vowel shift. Major pronunciation changes happened between the 14th and 18th centuries. That's a big reason why English sounds so different from its Germanic roots.
So instead of just gradually changing, it's like English did a whole linguistic 180.
Pretty much. English has always been a bit of a borrower, picking up bits and pieces from all over.
But don't think you're safe from these false friends just because you're sticking to English. These tricky words, you can find them even within the same language when you're dealing with different dialects.
Absolutely. Biscuit is a perfect example. You say biscuit in the U.S., you're probably thinking of something fluffy, buttery, perfect with breakfast.
Right. Classic.
But cross the pond to the U.K., biscuit means something more like a cookie. Can you imagine?
Talk about a letdown. Expecting a fluffy southern biscuit and getting a cookie instead. Not the same.
It just shows you, even within one language, there's so much variation. Geography, social groups, all those little local slang quirks, it all adds up to a different way of speaking, a different meaning for the same word.
We've gone from Spanish cafes to the history of English. It's been quite the journey. But how can we get better at navigating these false friends? Forget just memorizing a dictionary. Is there a better way?
Good news is it's not about rote memorization, really. It's more about shifting how you think about language in general, becoming more aware of the subtle shades of meaning. One of our sources, a blog post about language learning, made a great point about immersion.
Immersion? You mean like really diving into the language head first, not just flashcards and verb conjugations?
Exactly. Reading, podcasts, movies, all of it. When you hear the language organically, in context, those little differences in meaning become so much clearer.
Instead of just the rules, you're experiencing it. That makes sense.
It really does. And actually, one source talked about how valuable it is to spend time abroad.
Study abroad, travel, that sort of thing.
Right. Nothing beats real-life situations for highlighting those false friend moments.
It's like they say, you can read every book about swimming, but you won't really know until you jump in the water. Those aha moments, though, when you realize a word means something totally different, those must be valuable.
Absolutely. It shows the importance of making mistakes, embracing them even.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But don't let the fear of messing up stop you from using the language.
Right, right. So you're saying those slip-ups, they're not failures, they're chances to learn.
Exactly. Write down the false friends you come across, maybe even make them into stories to tell later. Make those mistakes memorable.
So instead of being scared of those linguistic landmines, we should see them as, like, stepping stones. Makes you wonder, though. Languages are always evolving, new words, new meanings all the time. What does that mean for the future? Are we going to have even more false friends to deal with?
Now that is the question, isn't it? Fascinating to think about. The world's more interconnected every day. Will languages start to blend together? Or will they keep going their separate ways, getting even more different?
It's like we're at a fork in the road, linguistically speaking.
Who knows? Maybe we'll end up with one big global language or a whole bunch of new dialects?
Only time will tell, I guess. But one thing's for sure, it'll be an interesting ride. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll even make a few false friends along the way.
That's the beauty of language, right? Always changing, always keeping us on our toes. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and whatever you do, don't be afraid of those linguistic curveballs.